Imagine walking into a restaurant, ignored by everyone, struggling to communicate, until one person changes everything with just a few words. Tonight, you'll hear the story of a billionaire, a lonely table, and the waitress whose simple act of kindness turned her life upside down forever. The restaurant was packed to the brim, alive with the rhythmic clinking of glasses, the soft hum of conversations, and the mellow notes of jazz drifting through the warm air. Waiters rushed from one end to the other, balancing trays overflowing with dishes, while customers laughed, celebrated, and enjoyed their evening meals. It was the kind of place where everything felt alive. Except for one lonely cornered eye in the middle of all that noise sat an elderly man who looked strangely out of place, as though he had stepped out of a different world entirely. His silver hair was neatly combed back, each strand in perfect order. His navy blue suit was crisp and tailored, the kind only someone with wealth and refinement would wear. Beside his chair rested a small, leather briefcase, polished so carefully it reflected the warm light of the restaurant chandeliers. Anyone with eyes could tell that this was no ordinary customer. His posture, his attire, his calm presence, everything hinted at importance. And yet, strangely, nobody treated him that way. The man tried to communicate with the staff. He pointed politely at the menu, attempting to pronounce the dishes in hesitant English. His voice was soft, respectful, patient, but every attempt was met with the same reaction. First confusion, then awkward gestures, and eventually, a waiter walking away to serve someone easier. One server even shrugged as he left, muttering, "I don't have time for this." Under his breath, it wasn't that the man was rude or demanding. He simply didn't speak English well. And unfortunately for him, not a single employee in that busy restaurant understood Japanese. To the workers, he was just a difficult customer slowing down their night. To the guests, he was an elderly tourist who didn't fit in. A few people even avoided his table altogether, worried he might ask them for help they couldn't give. But what none of them realized, not the waiters, not the manager, not the guests laughing nearby, was the truth. The quiet man sitting unnoticed at table 7 was one of Japan's wealthiest and most influential business magnates. He was traveling incognito, without an entourage, without security, without the usual attention. He wanted to observe different places with fresh eyes, searching for people and teams who valued service, respect, and cultural understanding. And so far, the restaurant he chose for his quiet test was failing miserably. 2 tables away, waitress Amara was moving so quickly she barely had time to breathe. Her tray clattered with glasses, her notepad overflowed with orders written in messy handwriting, and sweat gathered at her temple from the nonstop pressure. She wanted to do well. She needed to do well. But working at an upscale restaurant like this was far from easy. Amara was new to the job, new to the city, and honestly, still new to believing she even belonged here. Many of the senior staff looked down on her, whispering that she lacked experience, that she wasn't polished enough, that she didn't fit the restaurant's image. Customers sometimes ignored her presence entirely, choosing more familiar waiters even when she greeted them first. But Amara kept her head high and pushed forward. She worked twice as hard, smiled twice as much, and tried her best not to let the quiet prejudice around her seep into her spirit. While juggling refills, she suddenly noticed something strange out of the corner of her eye. The old man from table 7. He sat there alone, still waiting, still trying, still struggling. His fingers tapped lightly on his briefcase, the kind of nervous tapping someone does when they feel out of place but don't want to show it. His once steaming cup of tea had turned a dull, forgotten cold. The defeat in his expression hit her like a punch. She paused mid-step. Across the dining room, she watched another waiter approach him, only to give up again after a few seconds of miscommunication. The waiter shrugged, forced a polite smile, and walked away without truly helping. It wasn't the first, and it wouldn't have been the last. That Amara's heart tightened. He looks lost, and nobody cares. She whispered the words under her breath, her chest filling with a familiar ache. She knew that feeling too well. The feeling of standing in a room full of people, yet being completely invisible. She remembered her first months in this country, stumbling over English words, being judged before she even finished her sentences. She remembered the embarrassment, the frustration, the isolation. Seeing that same look in the old man's eyes made something inside her snap. Before she could second-guess herself or remember how busy she was supposed to be, Amara gently placed her tray on the counter, wiped her hands on her apron, and took a deep breath. Without thinking twice, she walked toward him as she approached the table. The man looked up with the same anxious expression he had worn all evening. Every waiter who had stopped by before her had left him looking even more confused, his wrinkled hands gripping the menu like a lifeline. He was clearly trying to say something, but the words never seemed to come out right. Not in Urdu, not in English. Amara had watched quietly from a distance, her heart tugging a little every time he tried to communicate and failed. She knew that feeling, the frustration of not being understood, the loneliness that came with it. So she took a slow breath and stepped forward, hoping she could help in some way. But instead of the routine, "Sir, can I help you?" she offered a soft smile and said, "Konnichiwa. Nanika odit sudai dekamasaka." "Hello, may I help you with something?" The man froze mid-sentence. For a moment he simply stared at her, as if unsure whether he had heard her correctly. Then his eyes widened, and the worry on his face melted away, replaced by relief so pure it was almost heartbreaking. "You speak Japanese?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "A little," Amara replied, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I studied it because I love the culture." That small confession seemed to open a door between them. The old man's shoulders, tight with tension moments ago, loosened. He let out a breath he'd been holding for far too long. Slowly, he opened the menu and pointed to different items, explaining in gentle Japanese what he preferred, what he was allergic to, what reminded him of home. Amara listened carefully, nodding at every detail, repeating his requests to make sure she understood perfectly. When she turned toward the kitchen and translated everything for the chef, she did it with a confidence no one in the restaurant had seen in her before. Other waiters paused mid-step, watching with disbelief. The manager, the same one who had once dismissed her as too quiet to handle customers properly, stood at the counter, eyebrows raised, unable to deny the change in the room. Because now, Table 7 wasn't a place of confusion anymore. The old man wasn't lost, or frustrated, or lonely. For the first time that entire evening, he was understood, and Amara, with her quiet voice and unexpected courage, had made it possible. After the meal, the old man gestured for Amara to sit across from him. Her heart skipped a beat. Customers rarely, if ever, invited a waitress to sit with them. Usually, her role was invisible, a shadow flitting from table to table. But tonight was different. She hesitated for a moment, then carefully lowered herself onto the chair opposite him, her hands resting lightly on her lap. The man studied her quietly for a moment, his silver hair glinting in the warm restaurant lights. Then, in a calm yet measured voice, he spoke. "I came to this country," he said, "to find a team for a cultural investment project, a partnership between Japan and international communities. I visited 10 restaurants this week, observing how people treat strangers." He paused, looking down at his hands, his fingers lightly brushing the edge of his briefcase as if it contained the weight of the world. "And tonight," he continued, his voice softer now, "I learned something important." Amara leaned in slightly, curiosity and a hint of nervousness mixing together. She had no idea what he was about to reveal, but every instinct told her it was significant. "For hours, I sat here ignored," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "Not because I was difficult, but because I was different. Only you came. Only you treated me like a human being." Her cheeks warmed, and a quiet lump formed in her throat. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came, only a stunned, incredulous silence. Then, with deliberate care, the man opened his briefcase. From it, he pulled a business card, the kind that radiated elegance, gold-edged, engraved with precision, shimmering under the restaurant lights. He slid it across the table toward her. "My name is Kenji Sato," he said softly. "A billionaire, yes. But today, I was simply an old man who needed kindness." Amara's eyes widened as she picked up the card, tracing the embossed letters with her fingertips. Her jaw dropped. The manager, standing nearby, gawked in disbelief. Other diners turned their heads, whispering, sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding before them. "I want you to join my project," Mr. Sato continued. You understand the importance of language and respect. People like you are rare. I need someone who sees others as humans first, not as tasks or inconveniences. For Amara, this wasn't just a job offer. It wasn't just an acknowledgement. It was an opportunity of a lifetime, a recognition of her empathy, patience, and courage, qualities she had always quietly nurtured, never imagining they could open a door to something so monumental. And in that moment, she realized that one simple act of kindness had changed her life forever. Weeks passed, and what had started as a quiet dinner in a bustling restaurant soon became a story the world couldn't ignore. The partnership between Sato Industries and an international hospitality program was officially announced, a project designed to promote cross-cultural understanding, respect, and inclusion across borders. The initiative aimed to train staff, develop programs, and showcase how a small act of empathy could ripple outward, changing lives in ways no one could predict. At the heart of this project was Amara, the same young waitress who, just weeks earlier, had quietly walked toward a lonely customer and greeted him in his own language. The girl who had once been underestimated, dismissed, and overlooked was now a symbol of compassion, courage, and cultural connection. Amara traveled to Japan alongside Mr. Kenji Sato, immersing herself in the project. She helped design training programs for restaurants and hotels, ensuring that staff learned not just the words of foreign languages, but the attitude and sensitivity needed to make every guest feel welcome. She appeared in documentaries, sharing her story in interviews, recounting the moment she realized that kindness, even without reward, could open doors to unimaginable opportunities. Her story spread like wildfire across social media and news outlets. Millions of people around the globe were inspired by the narrative. A young woman's simple gesture, a smile, and a phrase in another language, leading to a partnership between countries and corporations. Parents shared the story with children. Educators used it as a lesson in empathy. Business leaders highlighted it as proof that respect and human decency remain priceless assets. Meanwhile, back at the restaurant where it all began, the staff and management could no longer overlook her presence. They proudly hung a framed photograph of Amara on the wall, with a plaque that read, "The waitress whose kindness changed everything." When journalists asked Mr. Sato why he chose her, he spoke simply, yet profoundly, "Because she greeted me in a language of respect, not Japanese, but kindness." Amara, now recognized worldwide, would often repeat the words she had lived by. It costs nothing to treat someone like a human being, but sometimes the reward is something you can't even imagine. Her story became a lasting reminder that small gestures, patience, and empathy can transform lives, not only for those we help, but for ourselves as well. What began as a single act in a crowded restaurant ended up inspiring a global movement, proving that kindness, when genuine, is truly limitless in its power. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more awesome content. See you in the next one.